Hey there, Griff Hamlin here from Blues Guitar Unleashed. Welcome, thanks for joining me. In today's video, we're going to talk about something that is not specifically blues. It's got a little bit of theory in it, but you can definitely apply it to blues, and I will show you how to do that. But you kind of need to know the basic understanding of how it works. Now, on the way in, I was playing a little bit. That's kind of more the application. That's the application of the theory that I'm about to show you. Now, in a previous video, I have demonstrated how to create and play a major scale, and you're going to need to know that for this. So in that video, we talked about the fact that a major scale is from the root. You go whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. There's one extra really cool thing, or one extra really important thing. I happen to think it's also really cool, but it's also really important. And that is how to create what we commonly call the chord scale. Or you might hear this called the standard harmony rule. That's what I usually call it. And what it means is, let's say I have a G, good old G major chord. Let me get a little bit more juice. There we go. So I have a I'm going to make a G major scale. And you may remember you can do this all on one string. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Okay? Root, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, right? You might recognize that sort of do, re, mi type of sound. Okay, well, off of what we call the one chord. So if you build a chord off the first note in a scale, it's major. So we have a major chord, right? So in the standard harmony rule says that the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord are major. 2, 3, and 6 are minor. So 1 is major, 2 is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor. That's a little hard to reach way up here, but that's kind of how it goes. 7 is what we call diminished, or if you extend it out to a 4-note chord. All of these, by the way, are 3-note chords. They're what are called triads. The 4 chord is diminished. There's no way to really play this as such. So what we tend to do with the 7 chord is play what's called a minor 7 flat 5 chord instead. And so it's there's no way to finger that throughout the whole thing. So what I'm going to show you is the same fret, that F sharp. Let's go down here, it'd be easier to see. So we're going to take that F sharp, the same fret on the 4th string is what's called the flat 7 of the chord, okay? And then, so I have that on the next string, same fret with my 3rd finger, the next string with my 1st finger, and the top string with my pinky. And if you want to wrap your thumb around, knock yourself out. That's F sharp. F sharp is the root. Minor 7 flat 5. Okay? Now, like I said, an actual 7 chord is diminished. This is a 4-note chord. It's what I commonly call the extended harmony version, but it's way more easier to play. It's also a little bit more useful for what I'm about to show you, which is how to do these cool double stops. They come from these chord scales. So if you know your chord scale, you can actually just create these double stops out of thin air, like magic. Like, it's super easy, okay? So all I'm gonna do is take this chord and take the 1st and the 3rd string. So there's the G, right? There's the A. I just take the 1st and the 3rd string out of that chord. There's my B minor. I take the 1st and the 3rd string out of that chord. Done. There's the 4 chord. I take the 1st and the 3rd string out of that chord. 5 chord. 1st and 3rd string. 6 chord. 1st and 3rd string. However you want to finger that. 7 chord, remember, was really kind of ugly, but there's my 1st and 3rd string out of it, and then I'm back to the root again. So the root, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, root. Now what's really cool about this is that if you play a jam track that's in the key of G, okay, so what I put into my looper was E minor, C, G, and D. Okay, those 4 chords are in the key of G. And there's gobs of songs in the key of G. Any key will work, but G happens to fit fairly comfortably on the fretboard, so that's why it's a good place to start. I can actually sort of just meander around between these things. And what you're going to notice is that some of them sometimes will sound a little bit tense, but if you go one way or the other, they tighten up. And that's because every so often you're going to play one that is actually part of the chord that's going on right now. Sometimes you'll play one that's not part of the chord going on right now. So it's going to add a little bit of tension, but not tension in a bad way, just tension like keep going, you'll get to the right one. You really don't have to know, okay, this one is exactly the one that goes right here. It's really not that important. And you'll kind of learn as you get more comfortable with it, okay, this one works good over the one chord, these are like in the chord. You know, you'll learn stuff like that. But I used these for many years on gigs professionally, just kind of, you know, messing around with it and just kind of making stuff up. And it always works. It always sounds great, okay? It's just one of those sounds, particularly if you play kind of easy classic rock type stuff, it always sounds fantastic. So let me show you what I got. So here's my track. I'll turn that up a little bit. So there's the E minor and the G, or the C I mean, and the G, and the D. I'm just kind of playing them down, but notice that I'm making them rhythmically interesting. Don't just block them. Although that's not bad either. And so you kind of get to where you can go in order, then like leapfrog them. So what I'm doing is I'm, you know, going from the 1 to the 3 to the 2 to the 4 to the 3 to the 5. Right? And there's all kinds of, you know, just little things like that that you can do. Mess them up however you can. But just practice playing them along with a simple, you know, chord progression like that. And pretty soon you'll have a really good handle on how they go together. And it's really not that tough. And it's a great sound. You'll notice that I use my my pick and my middle finger to play those. And I'll either pluck them together or maybe split them. Okay, you can strum. You just, if you do that, you have to kind of be careful to mute everything else out. You could conceivably use 3 notes. As well, but what I find, at least to my ear, is that that creates a little bit too much harmony. It makes it a little bit too tense when I'm not right on where fitting with the chord. With 2 notes, it creates kind of an extended chord. It doesn't really sound super tense, but with 3 notes against potentially, I'll say, not the right chord. It's certainly not a wrong chord, but it can create a really, really tense harmony. You might like it, and that's okay. It's certainly an option, something to play with. But you have to know how to make the chord scale. So that means you have to know how to build a major scale, and you have to know that standard harmony rule. So again, a little bit of theory, and hopefully you dig it, and this is a great way to apply it. If you want to make it bluesy, by the way, there's a pretty cool trick for that. The pretty cool trick is this. Let's say you're playing a G7 chord. Pretend that G is the 5. So 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's how it works, okay? So, for example, if I were to play like just a simple little blues thing into my looper, 2, 3, 4, Okay? So you can see I'm 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2. And it does work. It works very, very well. Very, very well. The other thing I got to tell you about that, though, is that when the chords change, for example, when it goes from the G7 to the C7, you have to change completely. So if you're going to use that chord scale, you have to go to a C7 chord scale, which means treat the C as number 5 and count from 5. 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. So instead of counting from 1 as you would something that's in a traditional major key, you start counting from 5 and you've bluesified it. That's really all there is to it. Please don't make it more complicated than it is. So again, you're using a little bit of theory, the major scale, the standard harmony rule. You're building out what I commonly call the chord scale, and I've heard it called that by many people. And then you're just pulling out 2 notes. Could you pull out 2 other notes? Yes, you could. I have found that in most cases I don't care so much for the sound of that, and I don't hear it commonly used out in the world, so I don't think I'm alone in that. But the first and the third strings out of that chord scale are something that I hear used often, so I think you might have some fun with that. So, as always, if you've enjoyed this video, feel free to share it with friends. Again, I'm Griff Hamlin from Blues Guitar Unleashed, and thanks for joining me. I'll talk to you soon.